A former legend talks about future possible legends. Derrick Williams and the Wildcats going to join us. And the only thing better than robot umps, Jeff Passan will get his thoughts on the Major League Baseball season and untouchable dominance, also known as UConn women's basketball. Yahoo Sports Daily starts right now. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Yahoo Sports Daily. We're rack stacked back, ready for the next 2 hours. Caroline, I'm still shook. I still don't know how to react. I am still shooketh from watching last night. One of the wildest, maybe the wildest, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest. We are talking about an ending for the ages. If you did not see it, I'm sorry for the cave and the rock that you live under. But last night, UConn, with only fractions of a second left, did the impossible and took down Duke. I have a hard time, Caroline, putting this one in words.
I mean, forget one shining moment. That was a moment that is bigger than, an end of season recap of highlights. When we do what we do, and we are so privileged to do what we do. But when I watched that game last night, my initial thought was, okay, what are we going to talk about in the show tomorrow? What are my takes? I want to listen to the post-game press conferences. Instantly you try and gather your thoughts and you try and tailor all of your opinions that happen in that one moment. You try and just kind of perfect things for the show, and you try to put them together in an eloquent way so you can put together a good product for all of the wonderful people who watch and listen to your show. And that's what I did last night. And then after all of that, in the frenzy of trying to gather my thoughts and trying to put together takes, I just took a step back and I thought, whoa, man, maybe just step away from trying to form an opinion and just enjoy what we just watched. Before we hopped on, Fitz, I said to you and to all of our producers, I thought, I can't believe that happened. Sometimes the best opinion that you have is just, whoa, oh my goodness, we just watched a play, a 0.4 seconds that we will remember for the rest of our lives. Not only was that one of the best, if not the best moments that we saw in this year's tournament, that shot from Braylon Mullins, the freshman from Indiana, might I add, who is taking his team back to Indianapolis, to his hometown. Thank you very much. That moment, that untimely, unlikely shot, when he was 0 for 4 from the three-point line at that point in time, that moment will go down as one of the greatest NCAA tournament moments of all time. When UConn was down 19 at one point, when UConn was down 15 points at half, when UConn was down 9 with 5 minutes to go in this game, it was that moment that punched the Huskies' ticket to the Final Four for the third time in 4 years. It was just, wow. Like one of those moments that we can just enjoy and just say, sports are awesome.
It's funny to me because, I don't like to rank necessarily because that gets so subjective. I like to put things on shelves. Like when you walk into a bar and you say, I want top shelf vodka, right? To me, what immediately happened there is that moment, that shot of Mullins with his arms in the air and the clock as he realizes he's hit the go-ahead shot. That image, it goes up on the shelf. It goes on the shelf next to Leitner. It goes up on the shelf next to all-time historic moments that we remember. It goes up on the shelf that every year for the rest of time, when we talk about historic, amazing endings in the NCAA tournament, we talk about it. Every time there's just fractions of a second left, it will come up as one of the great buzzer beaters of all time. Even when a team is inbounding the ball with just a few seconds left, it will come up in the conversation. Every time we talk about Duke and heartbreak or Duke and glory, this will be part of that chapter. It writes itself in to the way that we will talk about this year's NCAA tournament team, this year's UConn team. It writes itself into the chapter of how we talk about Alex Caravan. It writes itself into the chapter of how we talk about Dan Hurley. Like, you just think about how many different books about basketball were impacted by one play taking just a few seconds. And to see that sort of a meltdown from Duke, and you can micro this meltdown. The meltdown of being up so much, the meltdown of having the lead, the meltdown in that moment of passing the ball when you're trying to get the ball past half court and sort of panicking in the situation. The number of meltdowns that had to happen for Duke. And on the other side of it, the amount of championship DNA that continues to be present in the UConn program is just stunning to me. If you watch and you go back to that play, Caravan there has the patience and the foresight to say, hey, I'm going to get the ball over to Mullins. And so you have somebody, the winningest player in UConn men's basketball history, that in that moment doesn't try and say, hey, this has to be about me. He instead finds the right shot, even though that player, as you mentioned, hadn't made a three all game. The amount of trust, the amount of championship DNA, the amount of just understanding the moment. Like, as much as I've been hard on Dan Hurley, and I think rightfully so for sometimes the tone he takes, this is why Dan Hurley can be Dan Hurley. Because whether it's him, whether it's what he brings to his players, whether it's what he brings to this program, however he inspires this from UConn, UConn is just never dead. They are never, ever dead. And this is why UConn should scare absolutely everybody every single year. Caroline, this ending is just, it becomes historic because there are so many layers and levels, because of the programs involved, because of the players involved, and because that moment truly is the epitome of one shining moment.
You mentioned Alex Caravan. And if you didn't watch this game, first of all, I'm sorry because you missed an all-timer, and you just looked at the box score, you're looking at Alex Caravan's contributions: 5 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 of 10 from the field. That's not an Alex Caravan game. Like, nothing about just those numbers and those stat lines alone pop off the page to anybody. But then you dissect it a little bit and you see how Alex Caravan impacted the game that didn't necessarily just pop up in the number of points he scored, the number of rebounds that he got. You mentioned the assist of the game. He could have taken the shot. He could have looked around and said, I've been here before, you haven't. He could have taken a shot that was not advantageous. He could have just gotten the ball off just to get the ball off. And there's a very high likelihood that if Alex Caravan takes that shot, that UConn is going home and Duke advances to the Final Four for the second year in a row. But he made the unselfish and very smart, high IQ basketball decision to pass that ball off and to give Braylon Mullins the shot. I thought that was massive. And also, Alex Caravan hit the three-point shot, his only one of the game, one of his 2 shots of the game, and with less than a minute to go to get that game within 1 point. That 3-point shot from Alex Caravan made the score 70-69 and set up all of this Cinderella magic to happen. So shout out to Alex Caravan, because those are the kind of decisions and those are the kind of impact that you get from a guy who's seen and played a lot of basketball. We also can't talk about UConn without talking about Terrace Reed. He was an absolute baller, an absolute beast in that game. He was like a human defibrillator. You know those things that you just, that the medics use? They go, clear, and he just like brings someone back to life. That's what Terrace Reed was for UConn yesterday. You see the stat line right there. 26 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks. He carried this team. And then in the second half, he was going 1-for-1 with Cam Boozer. Like, give me your best shot. I double dog dare you. I love that you brought up Dan Hurley and his personality and his mentality, because we critique it a lot. And look, there's a lot of critiquing with Dan Hurley's personality. Sometimes the way he acts, most of the time the way he acts, puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. He's the perfect example of a coach that if he's yours, you love him, and if he's not, you hate him. But his team took on Dan Hurley's, junkyard dog mentality of like, look, we are down 15 and a half, but this game's not over. They played with a certain level of toughness. They played with a certain level of, you can't count us out until the clock hits double zeros. And that's, I think, a big reason why we are now seeing UConn still in contention for winning a championship. It is the mentality that's a trickle-down effect from Dan Hurley to the rest of this squad. It is wildly impressive.
I think there's also a pay it forward sort of part of championship DNA, that this is why UConn continues. I mean, they're now in their 3rd Final Four in the last 4 years. And you look at roster turnover and the amount of times that there has been roster turnover. But every single time they've needed one of those transcendent moments that makes them UConn basketball, they've gotten it. And so now all of a sudden, this sort of trickles down into Mullins and everybody else that remains with that team for the next several years. Like, even as Alex Caravan, for example, that we've talked a lot about, walks away, even as you get to that point where guys advance out, UConn year in and year out has guys leave. And part of the reason I think they're able to keep this sort of championship culture is that everybody on the roster lived last night. Everybody on the roster takes last night with them and moves it forward. It's why when we filled out our brackets, this is my victory lap. I put UConn in the Final Four, and to me it was simple because I looked around and I thought, man, I don't really trust Michigan State to be able to shoot. What do you know? That reared its ugly head. I don't really trust Duke to be able to go in and play consistent basketball against UConn. It reared its ugly head. Like, I didn't trust St. John's to be able to get offense. It rears its ugly head. The one thing I looked across the board and said I can trust, to me, is Hurley. And this is why I think part of the reason, as we both mentioned, that we're tough on Hurley is because I do respect him so much. Like, I'm tough on Coach in the way that he acts at times and the way he uses his microphones at times, because he's clearly the best coach in college basketball, because he's clearly iconic to the sport, because he's clearly the face of college basketball. And he showed that. His team showed that last night. And it's not just, you're right, it's not just about Hurley. It's about every single player that plays for him that takes on a little piece of him. That's maybe the most beautiful thing about his coaching style, is that guys are different after they've spent a little bit of time around Dan Hurley. And that's not just about the way they play the game. It's about the way they approach the game. Guys are different. And every coach can tell us at the half, well, it's just halftime. We're going to make some adjustments. We're going to come out, play our game. We hurt ourselves. We hear the same thing from coaches every single game at the half. But there's a difference, because Hurley's teams always have that dog in them. And it really stands out. I think we struggle to put this into words because we shouldn't be surprised, but we are surprised. We struggle to put this into words because it was against Duke, which has such brand legacy and such cachet. But at the end of the day, I think we need to understand that maybe UConn is actually who we think Duke is. Maybe UConn is actually the legend in this sport, that we need to start putting that level of respect on their names every single time they step on the court. Maybe we need to press pause on the way that we talk about everybody else and just understand that UConn consistently finds themselves in this tier.
Uh-oh. You may have just opened Pandora's box on that one, that maybe UConn is who we think Duke is. Look, I think that, and strong take by you, I think that UConn belongs in the conversation along with the Dukes. Because I'm not taking Duke out of the conversation. I'm not taking Duke off of any sort of pedestal. But look, Danny Hurley and UConn getting to 3 Final Fours in the last 4 years and winning back-to-back national championships with the opportunity to win another one this year. I mean, if Dan Hurley wins 3 national championships in 4 years, I mean, we already have him in a rarefied air. What does winning a third in a 4-year span do for his legacy, do for the way that we kind of rank the hierarchy of coaches and all of college basketball? I'm with you. Like, UConn belongs in that conversation. But I don't want to just erase the history of Duke. And I also don't want to erase the fact that getting to a Final Four last year and then following that up with an Elite Eight is wildly impressive. But there is a Duke part of this conversation that I think is necessary. 2 things can be true at once. Jon Scheyer got Duke to a Final Four last year and was just a hair short of getting to another Final Four this year. That Jon Scheyer has done something that no other coach in Duke's history has done, and that's win 35 games in back-to-back seasons. Coach K never did that. Jon Scheyer has. Jon Scheyer belongs in the conversation as one of the best coaches in college basketball. But the other thing can be true as well. That Jon Scheyer had Con Knippel and Cooper Flagg, the 2 favorites to win NBA Rookie of the Year on a team last year and didn't win a national championship. That he has a guy who is likely to be the number 1 overall pick, if not number 1, then number 2, and if not number 2, then number 3, in Cam Boozer. That he has a pick in the NBA draft. He had wildly stacked teams with so much talent that didn't win national championships. That Jon Scheyer has suffered heartbreaking losses on the biggest stages in college basketball. I mean, you have a double-digit lead over Houston in the Final Four with a chance to get to a national championship, and you score 1 shot in the final 10 minutes of that game, and you let Houston go on a 9-0 run to win that game. And then in this game, you have a 19-point lead with an opportunity to go to the Final Four for the 2nd year in a row, and you blow it. And you have Caden Boozer just making a bad mistake in the final second of that game. And it doesn't just fall on Caden Boozer's shoulders, but that's what we're going to nitpick on days like today and on shows like this. That both things can be true. That Jon Scheyer deserves a lot of flowers. Jon Scheyer will go down, I think, as one of the great ones in this sport that has suffered 2 absolute heartbreaking losses. And I think Duke fans have every right to feel frustrated with Jon Scheyer, even given the amount of success that he's brought to this Duke program in a very short time.
I will remind everybody, Scheyer does not have a title. We all know that. Mm-hmm. Duke has 5 championships. To go back to my point from earlier, Connecticut has 6. 1999, 2004, 2011, 14, 23, and 24. They have 6 championships. Hurley only has a couple of them. So I say only, but this is a UConn team that again, they'll put their resume up against anybody. Hurley will put himself, as we know, up against anybody. And now we'll see if UConn can continue this run as they advance to the Final Four. Plenty of basketball action coming, by the way. We got lots to break down. Also, we're going to be breaking down Arizona with a special guest. I can't believe this. Derrick Williams is going to join us in about 15 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on what he's seen so far from Arizona, also having a legendary run. But let's continue the action. Coming up next, we got to get to all of the reaction from the women's side of the tournament, which was equally impressive for, stop me, you've heard this before, UConn.
What are some things about the Detroit Pistons that we on the outside might not know?
The culture, when I walked into this, the culture for me was pretty impressive. The way the players kind of come to bat for each other. And, Isaiah Stewart is not a guy off the court that is like an angry human being. In that Charlotte game, it was all he was saying in the locker room was like, I'm going to have you guys back. That's what I do. For me, it's impressive to see just how together everyone is and, the culture that they've continued to build.
I have Sadiq at the top like you. That's not the surprise. Sam Roush from Stanford, who had the big combine, unlike a lot of college tight ends that are productive, he actually, in my opinion, is playing the position like a pro right now. I love how he rumbles after the catch. I like Sam Roush quite a bit, Nate, because I just love that I could put him on the line of scrimmage, and I think he's tough as hell.
If you're a team that needs a left tackle, would you be concerned that this seemingly is a right tackle draft?
Concerned, no, because you got to have a plan for it. And this is where your area scouts and the forecasting of what's coming out in the draft is important, and understanding that. I want to go back to CeCe Mauanoa that you talked about. I think his overall stock is up for me because I'm feeling like now, if you have CeCe Mauanoa on your team, now he gives you the ability to put your best five on the field, whether he's your right tackle or he's your guard.
See the snap.
Jerome to throw, and that's caught. Damon Street goes up and gets it, and it'll be first and goal for New Mexico.
Damon Street's having a day.
First and goal. Johnson on the keeper, and he'll throw it up, and Jefferson's got it. Touchdown, New Mexico. How do you like that?
UConn's AZ Fudd enjoying a moment after earning another trip to the Final Four brings us the shirt of the day, Fudd Around and Find Out. Got to make sure I say that very clearly because I love my job. That is after yet another UConn win in Carolina. It's funny. This is just a randomness here, but there's a furniture store in Connecticut that every year does the same thing. Every year they say, hey, if you buy any furniture and both the UConn's men's and women's basketball team win a championship, it's free. We're going to give you all your money back. So it's a major furniture store that now has to be sweating it because what do you know? Oh, it looks at least a chance. The UConn women's team absolutely goes out. They take care of business. And it's funny to me also that they win by 18 over a talented Notre Dame team. And our conversation today is, I don't know, was UConn really good enough? They won by 18 and we're not happy.
And welcome to the standard of perfection that Gino Auriemma has set in Storrs, Connecticut. Welcome to the expectation that this team has set whenever you're beating teams by an average of, 50 points? Something ridiculous like that. A win over a very talented and deep Notre Dame team with one of the best players in the country feels like, ooh, yikes, what was wrong with them today? Maybe an off day. But, I say that not to nitpick or overly criticize UConn, but to just point out the standard that they've set. And look, this Notre Dame team was hot. This Notre Dame team, yes, you're seeing the number attached to them. If you haven't been paying attention to women's college basketball, you could say, oh, Notre Dame's a 6th seed. Why is a massive win for UConn even a story? Well, Notre Dame, they're a 6th seed because they sputtered throughout the regular season. But Hannah Hidalgo and this Notre Dame team as a whole were playing the best basketball of their season right now at the best time. They took down 2 seed Vanderbilt, and Michaela Blake's another one of the best players in the country. But Hannah Hidalgo is playing her best basketball of the season. And yes, Hannah Hidalgo had 3 steals on the day. Hannah Hidalgo now sets the NCAA record for most steals in a season, but Hannah Hidalgo also had 5 turnovers. This was the first time in her career at Notre Dame that she had more turnovers than she had steals. That's a credit and a tip of the cap to UConn that might not necessarily pop off of the box score, might not necessarily pop off in the final score, but I think is just a testament to how relentless this UConn defense is, and also how UConn is not going to make the fatal mistakes that really shoot themselves in the foot. They're not going to make so many mistakes that it's going to cost them a game, or at least we haven't seen that from this UConn team, and even going back to UConn teams of last season and UConn teams of old. This UConn team is a wagon. You're going to see Sarah Strong break that 20-point mark on really any given night. And then you're going to see players like Blanca Quinones come off of the bench and score 20 points. You're going to see AZ Fudd get hers on any given night as well. I mean, it's just like it feels like every single UConn game, you're learning a new name or you're seeing a new player step up in a really big way. And again, it just feels like UConn did it without breaking a sweat. Yet again, we're seeing UConn win a game, and it really wasn't even close. This UConn team is really one of the closest teams that I have ever seen to pure and utter perfection, Fitz.
It is tough to say. I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. Maybe we were earlier talking about the UConn's men team. I try not to be prisoner of the moment with this UConn women's team, but they're certainly stamping their status as one of the greatest UConn women's basketball teams of all time. And it speaks to the fact that I read as the game ended and laughed and chuckled at the concept of the immediate reaction article on ESPN that essentially made it sound like UConn struggled and they were sluggish and just couldn't get anything done and somehow managed to survive. And I genuinely looked back at the box score and said, what are we doing here? Like, did I miss something in this game? Yeah. We are at this spot where if UConn isn't up by 30 points in the first 10 minutes of the game, people look around and say, oh, I don't know. They're just better. And the funny thing to me about that is this is not a statement about the rest of women's college basketball, because as I've said many times on the record, I believe there's more talent than ever in the game. It's just UConn is better. They have more of it and they have more depth than anybody. So it's hard to find a way for them to get challenged right now other than to challenge themselves, because they're 18 points better than Notre Dame that had a really good night overall. Notre Dame, for what Notre Dame could have expected, did their job in this game and couldn't keep it competitive. So the question is, can anybody else? That wasn't the only outcome yesterday, though, from the women's side of this. UCLA, sorry, Duke fans, I feel like we're piling onto you. They knock off Duke.
Oh, man.
It was hairy, though. It was hairy for a while on this one. UCLA storms back. What did you make of that?
It was close until it wasn't. I was going, uh-oh, oops. Like, did Duke get a little momentum? Did they catch a little vibe after beating LSU on a buzzer beat? Oh, UCLA turned it on. Got it. Okay, understood. I think that this is actually one of the best things that could happen for this UCLA squad, is to get a little bit of a scare, is to feel the heat under their butts a little bit. We talked about this on Hoops 360. Myself, Ice Young, Cassandra Negley, going into the tournament, that UCLA had only lost one game all season long, and it was back at Thanksgiving when they lost to Texas in Las Vegas. And Cass and Ice's point was, maybe the best thing for this UCLA team was to lose a game down the stretch. Lose a game that they shouldn't have lost. Lose a game against another one of these contenders in the Big Ten, whether it be a Minnesota or a Michigan. Just to lose one game, just to snap back into reality and realize that, oh, we aren't the same kind of wagon that maybe it looks like UConn is. Just a little dose of reality. Now, of course, they didn't. And of course, UCLA has still found themselves in the Final Four despite not losing a game down the stretch. But the whole point of saying maybe UCLA needs to lose one of these games is just to get a dose of reality and to realize that you're not perfect and no team is. And maybe that's what that's what UCLA needed against Duke, was a little bit of a snap into it of, We can't just go on autopilot. We can't just sleep through our way to a championship. And we have to turn things on, especially when you're playing against some of the best teams in the country. And that's exactly what Duke is playing like right now. So I do think that UCLA feels like, in my opinion, a scarier team going into the Final Four because they had, almost, a cold water thrown in their face against a Duke team that's really good, but also has its flaws, because UCLA needed to turn it on to a second level, almost like a wake-up call of, look, we want to win a championship now. Because this is a window for UCLA that if they don't win a championship now, I don't know when they ever will. When you have Kiki Rice and Gabby Hawkes and a 6'7" Lauren Betts, that's one of the greatest advantages in this sport. They're all seniors. They're all leaving next season. So this is the window for UCLA. So if they want to capitalize on that window, they're going to have to get to that second level and play to their ceiling. And we saw them do that against Duke. And that's what they needed to win and punch their ticket to the Final Four.
Whatever it takes selfishly for them to survive, because I want to see the best versus the best. I mean, this is just, there are so clearly 4 teams that have been the best throughout the course of the season. I want to see them advance. Now, UCLA awaits the winner of Michigan, Texas. We also have TCU versus South Carolina. So when you look at that, so what's the best case scenario in your mind, Caroline?
Just for a good product, I think the best case scenario is all the ones advance. I'm not saying that just because I picked all the ones in my bracket, but because I think those are the 4 best teams in all of women's college basketball, that it felt so clear and so obvious that there is an elite tier of teams. And then there was kind of this secondary tier where I would have put LSU, I would have put Duke, I would have probably put Michigan in that category. But there was that kind of second tier, but that elite tier was 4 teams. And it was UConn, it was Texas, it was UCLA, and it was South Carolina. And we are seeing it in the results as well. I mean, all 4 of those teams are just absolutely obliterating their opponents thus far. Of course, we get 2 of those teams in action tonight. We'll have a reaction to that on Hoops 360. You can find it as soon as the games end on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page. But that's, I think, best case scenario for this sport in terms of the best games, the best matchups, in terms of brands, because that matters. Best case scenario for women's college basketball is that we get all 4 of the 1 seeds. But I do think that, a little bit of juice, a little bit of razzle dazzle is always fun. I'm always down for upsets. I am always here for unpredictability. But in this case, just in terms of the best basketball, you're going to want all 4 of the 1 seeds to advance.
Yeah. And as we get to this spot, what I want are the best games. So to your point, I would not trade a magical moment for a great championship. And that's just all I keep thinking about is what's going to give me the best opportunity at a great championship. And certainly we've talked a lot about UCLA over the course of the year. We all know the dominance of UConn. I'm never going to bet against Dawn Staley. I want these opportunities to see the best of the best have their chance to shine on the biggest stage, right? I think this is just sort of what's bet. We can survive. And even when you just talk about narratives that we talk about a lot about, I'm willing to watch 50-point wins all through the first, second, third. That's fine. When we get to the championship, what I want to see is a nail biter. I want to see what actually happens when a UConn team is tested all the way down to the end, presuming that they make it there, right? So to me, what's most important is to get that opportunity when your sport, as we say all the time, has the best opportunity to get the most casual eyeballs. That's a championship game, right? I want the best championship game I can possibly get. One team that wants to watch that best championship game is Arizona. Coming up next, we will break down what we see from Arizona. How about this? From Arizona legend Derrick Williams joining us next.
Who is your first player to team fit that you absolutely love?
Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end of Oregon, to the Chiefs. And this was basically a post-combine reaction, basically Vernon Davis style numbers athletically. And so I think it was validating to see kind of him put those numbers up athletically, his speed, explosion, change of direction. He feels like a player that is not going to drop very far in this draft, especially in a draft where there aren't a ton of blue chip players.
Do you feel pressure that this is America's birthday, this is the White House, you have to represent?
Hell yeah. I do feel pressure. I feel pressure that, I got to go out there and represent for the United States, and I got to go out there and I feel like I'm going to be expected to go out there and win this fight. I'll probably be a favorite. There's pressure right there too. I put pressure myself. I need to finish. It's been too long.
Johnson to the end zone, caught. Guess who? C.J. Jefferson.
And in talking to the coaches this week, I mean, they said that's your playmaker. That's the guy that Jerome Johnson has the most confidence in. And there you are on 4th and goal, and you throw it right at the goal line, right at the yellow line at the wall. Terrific throw. Nice catch.
Great execution there for New Mexico. They had to have a play.
The Dallas Mavericks, are they still taking Cooper Flagg, Corey?
He is legitimately, as a 6'8" wing who does everything at a high level. Shows up every day, competes his ass off.
The way his handle has improved since high school to Duke to now suggests that this guy can be a MVP candidate, not just a multi-time All-Star as a role player, a high-end star role player, but a mega star.
Before tonight, Arizona men's basketball have been 11-25 all-time in NCAA tournament play when trailing at the half, and had never won a game when facing a halftime deficit larger than the 44-38 margin against Duke on March 24, 2011 in the Sweet 16. That is a great stat, and why do we tell it to you? Because if you need a refresher of what happened on March 24, 2011, Derrick Williams and his 5-seeded Arizona stormed back to beat the number 1 seed Duke by 16 points, thanks to 32 and 13 from Derrick Williams, who joins us right now. Super excited about this. How often do you think back in that game, Derrick?
Thank you. Man, all the time. It's a big reason, I'm still playing today. My name is known all around college basketball, different parts of the world. Everywhere I go, wherever I'm playing, people are always telling me about this game and how it's just an amazing experience to be a part of. So, it was an amazing time.
Legends are made in March, and that's exactly how you kind of made a name for yourself when you were there at Arizona. And 15 years later, Arizona's been knocking on the door of a Final Four, but just couldn't quite break through until this past weekend. So when you're watching that Arizona-Purdue game, when you saw Arizona punch their ticket to a Final Four, what was going through your mind as somebody who obviously, loves this program and spent a lot of time in it?
Yeah, it's a great experience. It's good for the fans. It's good for the players. Everybody who loves Arizona basketball has been waiting for this moment for 25 years now. And I think it's just big. It's big for the program, for Tommy Lloyd to come in and do this so fast and have these guys with this connective energy that they have. You can tell that they love to play with each other. So at the end of the day, it's big for the program, especially guys in the background too. Kukowski, Chris Rounds. Those guys have been there for a long time now, and so they've been waiting to kick down the door and get to the Final Four as well. So it's just a huge boost for the program.
You're still playing right now professionally. Have you had the chance to talk to any of the guys on this team? Have you had the chance to sort of give them any of your March Madness wisdom?
I haven't. I think, sometimes you want to take a step back and just enjoy it. I think what's great about this team is they have a good mixture between veteran guys, meaning seniors, juniors, and a good mixture of really, really good freshmen as well. And so I think that they have such a good energy out there on the court, and they have guys from all over the world out there playing. And I think all of that combined, people playing in Europe before coming to the States, I think it's just a good group of guys. You have Jaden coming in, being the player of the year. And with freshmen, Koa, you have Krivas, you have all these guys, and I think the X factor is Ivan. I've been watching the games, and he's such a good player, and I think a lot of these guys from Europe bring such a tough mentality, and being able to just come in and impact the game right away. He's my favorite X factor right now in the tournament. So I think they have their own connective energy going.
I do want to get back to that in just a second, how Arizona could win a national championship. But first, I want to go back to your point that you made about some of the freshmen. I was watching this Arizona-Purdue matchup. I'm looking at Trey Kaufman-Renn, Purdue, senior. Oscar Clough, senior. Fletcher Lawyer, senior. Braden Smith, senior. Then Braden Berry's freshman. Koa Pete, freshman. I mean, these young freshmen went toe-to-toe with these massive Purdue superstars that have seen and played a lot of basketball. What do you learn from some of these freshmen that are able to step up in such big moments and take down guys that have much more experience at this level than them?
Yeah, I think, they're coming in with a chip on their shoulder. These guys have had great high school careers, and I think, being able to play at such high level early on in your career, it kind of molds you. And some of these guys, they're ready for this moment. And as you could tell by their performance in the last game, sometimes I think people were saying that even though we're number one seed, it's almost like an underdog feel because we have a young team, a young force leading the way. But I think these guys are ready for this moment. And, it's always good when you play, powerhouses like Purdue and teams like this who have been there, the last few years, who have been to these Elite Eights and been to these Final Fours, and they're ready to make that next step too. But, sometimes you have special freshmen like these two that come in and they're ready for the moment and they don't back down. And I think that's what's best about this team. They have guys who are ready to play and the moment's never too big for them. And that's what I've been noticing so far this season.
All right, so we want to give you the opportunity to hype your guys up, get your guys ready, right? So we're going to put you in the locker room, right? You can just go straight to your camera. This is going to go viral. The world's going to see it. This team's going to see it. If you had that chance to stand in front of these guys today and talk to them, give us your moment, your pregame speech for this team.
Man, put me on the spot. Well, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. It can either make you or break you. This is the first time. The guys in this locker room, first time in 25 years that people have been this far. And I think the best thing about it is all the teams that are left are the best teams that showed it throughout the whole season. And if you want to be on top, you have to prove it every single possession. And I think that's what is going to drive you to that championship game, to that final, and the first final in almost 30 years. So I think take it possession by possession, anything can happen, just like the last few games. And I think we're ready for this moment. Just got to go out there and play.
And then they get ready to just run through a brick wall. But, we can just imagine, let's say Arizona's cutting down the nets. They're hoisting a national championship trophy. If that comes to fruition, if we see Arizona win a national championship, in your opinion, it will be because of what?
Oof. Well, I think they have like I said earlier, they have a good mixture between freshmen and seniors. I like Tobe Owaka. He's been playing amazing. He plays tough basketball. He's been in different conferences. He's seen the ups and downs so far, and what you need to really excel in these type of games. They have good freshmen, and also too coaching. I think with Tommy Lloyd's experience throughout his career, and that DNA, that championship DNA, I think they have a really, really good chance to win this title. There's other teams left. There's 3 other teams left that are great as well. But I think what it takes is throughout the whole season, they had 2 losses that were back-to-back against a very, very good Kansas team and then a Texas Tech team at home. And so those are the only 2 mishaps I saw within the season, and they bounced right back from it. And I think, just a quick turnaround, being able to turn the next page, I think that's really what's been great about this team is they never let a few possessions take them out of their game. And what I saw against Arkansas, which was an amazing stat, was they scored over 100 points, but only took 6 threes. And so they made 5 out of 6 threes. And for you to score over 100 points, that means you can score in the paint. You can get to the basket at will. And I think, with Jaden being the player of the year and him being able to basically, run the show and being able to get downhill whenever he wants, and with the shooting ability of the guys on the team, I think it's a good mixture that many teams don't have, and I think, like we said earlier, it's been 25 years. Everybody's excited for this moment. All the players know it, all the coaches know it, and the fans as well. So everybody's excited. Everybody's looks like they're ready to play. And I know they can't wait. I know they can't sleep either.
Derek, you got to get to the heart of the real drama here, which is the trash talking. And this is what I can never figure out, because you played in the Pac-12, right? But now you're a team that's in the Big 12. So when you're trash talking everybody you know, are you trash talking the people that you were around in the Pac-12, or are you trash talking people that you know in the league and that play professionally now that are Big 12 teams? Like, how does this all work in your phone?
So this is the crazy thing. I was actually in the Pac-10 the last year of the Pac-10.
Pac-10, yeah.
And so
R.I.P.
and so it's changed so much within the last few years. But you know, it's really cool. You see different rivalries now throughout the year. You know, the good rivalry that I like is, you know, always playing, you know, being able to play Houston, being able to play Kansas. You know, these are the teams that when you were in the Pac-10, Pac-12, you always wanted to play teams like Kansas and guys like this. And so I just think that the conference is amazing now. It's continue to keep growing every single year. And I think it's good for the players. You know, it's good for, you know, the future recruits coming. They get to see the type of talent every single night that the Big 12 is producing. You know, in this season, I believe that they have the most wins against top 25 teams. And so I believe it's at 12. And so it's just great for the program, you know, being able to showcase on a national stage every single time in the Big 12. It's an amazing thing. So, you know, the trash talk between different conferences, it's a little different, but it's always fun in games.
Yeah, I mean, the Big 12 was a wagon this year. In Arizona was a big reason why. But there's no doubt, even going into the Final Four with how many great matchups we have, one of the biggest storylines surrounding college sports is who will North Carolina's next head basketball coach be? So, of course, that raised some eyebrows when we heard Arizona head coach Tommy Lloyd say, Arizona's going to have another great coach after me, I promise you, when he was asked about protecting the program. So when you hear that, what do you think? Do you have an issue with Tommy Lloyd saying that?
No, I think you know, he's a very, very intelligent man. He knows what he's doing. You know, UNC is a huge job as well. And you know, I've been seeing multiple sources from different guys, you know, possibly being the new coach at UNC. But, you know, sometimes you never know with certain things, especially in the NIL era. This is a whole different ball game compared to when I was playing in college. And so, but, you know, he's an intelligent man. He knows what he's doing. I know he's in the moment. He doesn't want to look too far ahead. You know, he really wants to win this whole thing. Getting to the Final Four is not enough. And so being able to win the chip and really cementing his legacy in Arizona basketball is his main focus. I know that for a fact. And so I know he's eager to do that and to bring Arizona basketball back into that national stage like he's been doing the last couple of years. And so sometimes people take things out of context a little bit, but I believe he wants to stay in the moment and enjoy this run that he's been having the last few years, the most wins in a 3-year span, 4-year span, things like this. And so I know he's excited, but like I said, I know he wants to stay in the moment and just continue to win in this program and cement his legacy.
As good as this program has been, it's been so long since they won a championship. For everybody that has played at Arizona, what would it mean for everybody that laid this foundation to see a championship for this Arizona team?
Man, that would mean everything. Arizona is one of the premier programs in the States. You know, like we were talking about, it's been 25 years. You know, since 2001 that we've been to the Final Four, and we've been knocking on the door a few times. The year that I was there, a couple times after that. You know, we had some tough Wisconsin losses, but we've been knocking on the door, and I think everybody who's been a part of the Arizona program has been looking forward to this moment and to getting back to that elite status that everybody knows it should be at. And so everybody who the former players, everybody's excited. You know, they want to bring something back, you know, to Tucson, knowing that all the former players are behind them. You know, the last game that I was able to see was about a year and a half ago in Tucson when they played Duke. They were doing the home and home, and you know, it was with Cooper Flagg and those guys. So it was just a good time to see, you know, Gilbert Arenas that came back and all these guys. You know, the love and the pride is still there from 20, 25 years ago, and in my case, 15 years ago. And so it's always good to see the young guys really put on for the school, for themselves, and their career. And so it'll be great to get a championship for sure. I know the fans will love it. Everybody, there will be legends out there. And so if you can get a chip at the University of Arizona, you'll be a legend forever. So I know the guys are looking forward to that.
Well, as somebody sitting in a hotel in Tucson, I name dropped that we were having you on last night. Everybody loves you here. You are a legend here. We appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Best of luck watching the game. I hope you guys get this win. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Great stuff from Derek. All right, before we get back to the NCAA tournament, coming up, we have drama between the NFL and their officials. We'll tell you about it next.
What do you make of Dana's demeanor since getting into this?
I listened to all of his stuff where he used to just destroy boxing promoters, that we take no risk. And then I see him like tattoo on an island between Crawford and Canelo in a photo op where he's not doing anything. He's standing there just like one of us schmucky promoters in between two guys in like a stand-up cutout. It just feels off to me.
And the Lakers look like contenders right now. But Danny, I know you have some skepticism about this team's ability to actually get through the gauntlet that is the Western Conference. Why is that?
They'd have to beat Jokic, Wemby, and Shea in consecutive rounds, 2 of the 3 without home court advantage. I do not believe they can win 3 Western Conference playoff series. I do not believe that.
Now,
they do hand the ball off straight up the middle. Swiggity Swooty went for the booty. That is a touchdown. What a run. I'm going to need a moment. Ball's in the air, and just like that, C.J. Wyndham with yet another big play.
That was the exact play action after the first play of that drive. They set it up perfectly.
What was your impression of him? Do you feel like you have a friendship with Giannis now?
I feel like he was just my friend. Like, I didn't even see him as just a basketball player, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I was just like that's just my guy. Cause we were just chilling. Like, he took me to his home. He took me to his first we did his first dunk in his neighborhood. So like, he was just showing me around. And I think we still check up on each other. I just need to go to one of his games, which I promised him.
With the NFL's annual meeting starting Sunday, the league has issued a specific directive to all teams when it comes to ongoing CBA talks with the NFL Referees Association to not say anything. They're being told to be as quiet as possible because things are getting heated between the officials and the NFL, Caroline, as we are in a negotiation period that has everybody worried about the possibility we could maybe be looking at replacement refs. This is just like everything else. For anybody that hasn't been paying attention, the NFL referees have their own union, and that union deal is up, so they're not collectively bargaining with the league for new stakes. And we've seen plenty of leaks. Tom Pelissero has been saying plenty on the NFL Network and about saying that, quote, the NFL plans to begin hiring replacement officials before the May 31st expiration of its labor deal and deploy them into training camps to have them ready if no agreement is struck with the NFLRA. Our direction from owners is not to be unprepared. So are we headed for a worst case scenario here?
We very well could be. And I do acknowledge that just because these refs may be quote unquote replacement refs doesn't mean that there's going to be a significant decline in quality of refereeing or officiating, but it will give fans at least fuel to the fire to believe that it is. It's much easier to say my team got screwed by replacement refs that don't know what they're doing than it is to say, okay, anything else, even though we always love to point the finger at referees no matter what, even though it may just be your team's just not very good. But let's point the finger at the refs. Why not? Let's do that. I think that the scary thing that the NFL may be approaching, and I do understand that talking about officiating on March 30th isn't necessarily the sexiest part of talking about the NFL, right? And I do understand that talking about officiating in general is not necessarily the sexiest part of the NFL until it comes to your team getting screwed by a bad call, until it comes to your team's, missing a call or whatever it might be. It's always unsexy to talk about refereeing until it comes down to your team. The NFL has to get this right. The NFL, whether it's finding quality replacement refs, whether it's coming to an agreement with the Referees Association, with the union, whatever it might be, the NFL cannot afford to have bad officiating impacting the biggest moments in the biggest games, Fitzy. I think this is, although it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, it's critical and can drastically affect the outcome of games, as we've seen hundreds of times before.
I find it interesting, too, because the last time that we saw replacement officials was 2012, okay? And that gave us the Fail Mary and many other regrettable moments. And so I find myself, because as everybody knows that watches this show, you and I get to do a lot of work around the Indoor Football League. So I was asking somebody with a lot of experience that understands refereeing at every possible level about whether or not this was going to create opportunity for Indoor Football League officials, for example, to get some tape, maybe move their way up to the NFL. I was pretty stunned when the answer was jarring without any hesitation of no, because there's a unified front between officials, not just at the NFL level, but even at the college level. And what was said to me that really sticks in my head is that college officials that want to get to the NFL are not going to cross a picket line. College officials that have a long career ahead of them don't want to be non-unified with the union, their union brothers that are in officiating worlds, even if it's college to NFL. So what was said to me that I think really stuck is that unless it's an official at the very end of their career that just wants to work an NFL game so they can say they worked an NFL game, there's a unification across officials right now at football at all levels, all high levels, that makes it virtually impossible in the minds of the people I've talked to that anyone's going to cross those lines. So what does that mean? What that means to me is that the talent pool is not as simple as the NFL reaching out and saying, we want refs, and qualified refs that work major college football say, okay, we'll come do this. You're the NFL. It's not that simple. The concept's going to be eventually they will work it out as they did last time in 2012. I think they worked it out in about week 3 of the season. So what happens to everybody that crosses the picket line and then has to figure out how to go make a living doing what they were doing before? The word blackballed was used multiple times with me when speaking to people with knowledge around the situation about what it would mean for officials that choose to go work for the NFL. So I'm not here to speak on the unionization of the NFL Referees Association or how powerful that union is. I don't know. But I do think it becomes concerning when you talk to officials at different levels of football and you just immediately find out that there is a unification across all fronts that makes me wonder if the NFL is going to be able to get talented enough people. So to your point, when we are looking closer, we're scrutinizing more because we know they're replacement refs. All of a sudden, these calls could get really ugly really fast. And in a league where one game can make a massive difference between coaches being fired and quarterbacks being cut or making the playoffs, that has consequence. So I think the NFL is coming in with the brazen sort of mindset that they can do whatever they want because of the NFL. I think the referees believe that they are far more unified than the NFL believes, and this could get really ugly because of it.
And that's fascinating, the story that you bring up about referees who are very hesitant to cross that line and to make the leap into the National Football League. Could be a root of the cause of maybe why we feel like there is a lack in quality officiating in the NFL, and it's probably because there are a lot of quality officials who aren't willing to make that leap. But my question to that is, and I know that this is a conversation that you had with somebody else, so you may not necessarily have the answer, but the question that I have is why? Like, I would think, in theory, it's the same thing as players or broadcasters, but the NFL is the pinnacle. That you start in wonderful leagues like the indoor football league, or the UFL, or in college and high school and little league in middle school, whatever it is. You start refereeing in one league, in the NFL, for just like players, is the pinnacle. Like, you work and you work and you work and you perfect your craft and you accumulate all of this tape and you make the right connections to eventually one day call a Super Bowl, call games at the highest level of the sport in the NFL. So why are referees so hesitant to make that jump?
Because it's a union. I mean, the honest answer here is that, just like SAG-AFTRA, when they have a writers' strike in TV, for example, so many qualified writers don't cross those picket lines, because by crossing those picket lines, you're reducing the power of the union that you're eventually hoping to become part of. So now all of a sudden, how do you eventually, like, this is the complication that comes with being like, I've been a part of SAG-AFTRA, excuse me, and I've been a part of the musicians union and all of these different things. Like, what you start to look at when you see unionization being collective bargain, if you cross those picket lines, you in the future won't be asked to join that union because you weren't solid with your union brother. I'm not here politically. I'm staying way out of the political discussion of the value or lack thereof of unions. That everybody differs on that. But if you cross that picket line because you want to work an NFL game, you have to understand that will be the only time, because when the officials come back, you won't be by those officials to join their ranks to ever work games. So that's the consequence to it for many people. That's where it gets complicated.
It's
just like
fascinating.
NFL players can't if you're a player and you just want to get into the league and there's a strike, the WNBA, same thing. If there's a strike and you just want to get your shot, the minute you take that shot, you're essentially admitting that you are not ever going to become a part of the very union, because you're undercutting the union by taking that opportunity. So it's the complication that comes, again, staying out of the political discourse on unions one way or the other. We'll get back to this because this story is not going to go anywhere. But coming up, after a wild, epic, incredible ending, we're going to talk to one of the best in all of the business to do it. Jay Bilas is going to join us next on the show.
What are some things about the Detroit Pistons that we on the outside might not know?
The culture, when I walked into this, the culture for me was pretty impressive. The way the players kind of come to bat for each other. And, Isaiah Stewart is not a guy off the court that is like an angry human being. In that Charlotte game, it was all he was saying in the locker room was like, I'm going to have you guys back. That's what I do. For me, it's impressive to see just how together everyone is and, the culture that they've continued to build.
I have Sadiq at the top like you. That's not the surprise. Sam Roush from Stanford, who had the big combine, unlike a lot of college tight ends that are productive, he actually, in my opinion, is playing the position like a pro right now. I love how he rumbles after the catch. I like Sam Roush quite a bit, Nate, because I just love that I could put him on the line of scrimmage, and I think he's tough as hell.
If you're a team that needs a left tackle, would you be concerned that this seemingly is a right tackle draft?
Concern, no, because you got to have a plan for it. And this is where your area scouts and the forecasting of what's coming out in the draft is important, and understanding that. I want to go back to CC Mauanoa that you talked about. I think his overall stock is up for me, because I'm feeling like now, if you have CC Mauanoa on your team, now he gives you the ability to put your best five on the field, whether he's your right tackle or he's your guard.
See the snap.
Jerome to throw, and that's caught. Demond Street goes up and gets it, and it'll be 1st and goal for New Mexico.
Demond Street's having a day.
1st and goal. Johnson on the keeper, and he'll throw it up, and Jefferson's got it. Touchdown, New Mexico. How do you like that?
UConn is the first team ever in men's NCAA tournament history to beat a 1 seed after trailing by 15 or more points at the half. It was an absolute wild ending. It was a wild game. We've been trying to put context around it all day, and now one of the titans of this business, one of the best to do it, Jay Bilas from ESPN joins us. Jay, I'll just start right there. You've seen so much college basketball, my friend. How did you react to what you saw last night?
I think the same way that any fan that was watching the game, my jaw was on the floor. It was an extraordinary ending. And I was an assistant coach on the Duke staff when Christian Laettner hit that shot against Kentucky in 1992. And the feeling was identical of, I can't believe that happened. It was one of those things. And I think you look at all these different videos that are coming out of people in their living rooms or wherever it would be. And it was the same reaction, whether they had a rooting interest or not, of people jumped off the couch or whatever they were sitting in. They couldn't believe it. And I was the same. It was, it's one of those things that's going to live on forever. Walk-off home run, Dwight Clark in the end zone. People are going to remember this forever.
It's one of those moments that you just can't help but say, what just happened? My jaw is still on the floor. But from the Duke perspective of things, where does this rank, in your opinion, amongst some of the most heart-wrenching moments in Duke basketball history?
It'll probably be number one. There have been, obviously, you play at that level and you're going to have difficult losses. I think everyone, myself included, that's played there can point to that. But that sort of, on one hand, you have to give UConn a great deal of credit for the fight that they showed. I think John Shire was right in his press conference that it wasn't about the one play until it got down to the one play. So there were a number of plays, like Duke only scored 28 points in the second half. They shot over 50%, but they had 8 turnovers to UConn's 1 in the second half. And there were a number of miscues and mistakes that led to that last play. But the last play itself, so it's not about that one play until you get down to the one play. And so Duke's up 2 with the ball. And when they inbounded it, they did just about everything right until Caden Boozer made the catch. And when he caught the ball in the middle of the floor, Duke does a drill every day, whether it was Coach K for 40 years or John Shire. They call it four coach passing drill. And it's dealing with full court pressure. You come back to the ball, you catch it and on 2 feet, and you face the defense. The coaches say catch and face. And when you face the defense, then you can, and strong with the ball, then you can assess things and make a play. Whether it's back dribble around, pass fake up top, pass around, whatever it may be. And Caden Boozer caught the ball and he caught it turning and then dribbled it and then jumped up in the air to make a pass and it got deflected. And so it was great execution by UConn and it was poor execution by Duke. And I've always wanted to do this in television. I've never had the chance because of time reasons, but you take that one play and then you listen to the difference in how the coaches of each team would deal with their teams on it. So Danny Hurley would be saying, hey, great trap, high hands, great deflection, great poise here. And John Shire would be saying, hey, we got to be stronger with the ball here. It's catch, face the, all that stuff. It'd be totally different processing of the same play depending on your point of view.
And look, John Shire has done something that Coach K, or no other coach at Duke for that matter, has ever done, and that's win 35 games in back-to-back seasons. John Shire got Duke to a Final Four last year, was a hair short of a Final Four this year. But also, John Shire's teams have suffered heartbreaking losses in back-to-back seasons. Giving up that lead against Houston in the Final Four last year, obviously what happened with UConn last night. From your perspective, what's the appropriate reaction to John Shire and where he stands right now?
Taking a step back and taking a measured look at everything. So it's not one of these things where, you can't win the big one or you can't keep a lead because they have done that. But there is a trend here that you need to look at. And one of the issues that Duke has is they basically have a new team every year. And a lot of their best players are freshmen. And freshmen, by and large, don't have the same memory bank as seniors do. So Alex Caravan made one of the great plays you'll ever see when Mullins corralled that ball after the deflection on the last play and kicked it ahead to Caravan. Caravan could have shot that ball, but instead he had the poise and maturity to understand, if I shoot this, it's not the best thing. So he pitched it back to Mullins, who had a step-in 3. Like, that's a senior experienced play. Not every senior can make that play. but that's a senior experience play. A lot of the Duke players don't have that memory bank. And most of the games that Duke played this year, they weren't in a late game situation. Their two losses heading into the game against UConn were against Texas Tech and North Carolina, both of which they had double-digit leads. Texas Tech, I did both those games. Texas Tech, they were up 17, wound up losing the game. And Texas Tech was really good. And same thing with North Carolina. They were on the road, had a 13-point lead, and lost that at the end on the Seth Trimble shot that's iconic. So you have to look at that. Like, you have to be able to put those players in as many game situations in practice as you can. So maybe that means going forward, as much game situation work as they do in practice, maybe you have to do a little bit more. So I think John Shire's really smart and really mature, especially for his age. So I think you'll see an adjustment there, and they'll handle like they would anything else. You use this kind of situation and loss as fuel for doing better in the future. You can't beat you're naturally going to beat yourself up a little bit, but you got to stop all that stuff and use it in the best way possible so there's positive results in the future.
Jay, I'm overly analytical. I hate things I can't define. So when I hear championship DNA, it drives me crazy because I can't define that. What is it that you see about Hurley that makes UConn wired so different?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying they're wired extraordinarily differently than other top teams. I think you could say the same thing about University of Houston under Kelvin Sampson or Duke under John Shire, all that stuff. There are programs that have that championship DNA, and it's exhibited every day in practice, that you have championship habits. And one thing I know about UConn under Danny Hurley, and I think it went all the way back to Jim Calhoun, is their players are under stress every day. And the stress of their practices, I don't think even compares to the stress of a game. And so they're in those situations all the time. And especially with their older players, like that's why I said the thing about memory bank is when you're in those situations over and over again, you're going to fail in certain those situations. UConn's like anybody else. They failed in those situations, but they have that memory bank to be able to draw on where they've done it before. They've been there before. And the freshmen see it from the older players, and they develop those championship habits, and they're more likely to react positively under pressure. So that's what I mean by that. Like, I'm not saying that one team had the championship DNA and the other didn't, but certainly without UConn's championship DNA, they don't win that game. They don't, because there were reasons for them throughout the second half, as valiant as that comeback was, there were reasons for them to pack it in. Like Silas Demery misses the first of two free throws, and you could have like hung your head. Or the wide open shot that Braylon Mullins had to cut the lead down to one possession missed. I mean, you could hang your head, and they never did. So on one hand, you can look at Duke and say all the things they didn't do, which is a factor, but UConn doesn't win without all the championship things they did do. And those things go hand in hand.
Let's stick on the theme of championship DNA then. Of the four teams that we have remaining still contending for a national championship, which team do you think has the best or the strongest or the most of that championship DNA?
Well, UConn's up there. But I felt for a good part of the season that Michigan and Arizona were the two best teams, and they're different. They both have tremendous size. Like Arizona is a team, they're led by three freshmen. Two of their top leading scorers are freshmen, Koa Pete and Braden Burries. And they've got another freshman, Ivan Karchenkov, who's their best defender. So to have three freshmen that carry that big of a load is unusual on a team that's 36-2, and 36 is the most games Arizona's ever won. So it's been an extraordinary season for that team. They're an inside dominant team. Like, they don't rely on three-point shooting. The free throw line is the place where they score the most efficiently, and they make more free throws than their opponents attempt. So when you play against them, you've got to defend without putting them on the foul line. That's easy to say and hard to do because how big, strong, and resolute they are to get the ball inside and pound you in the paint. And then Michigan's got the same kind of size. They play a little bit differently. They run beautiful offense, and they've got a player in Yaxel Lendeborg who transferred in from UAB Last year, there were 2 players in the country that led their teams in scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, and blocks. One was Cooper Flagg at Duke. The other was Yaxel Lendeborg at UAB. And very few people outside of the basketball literati even knew who he was. He transfers to Michigan, and now everybody knows who he is. And that's one of the great things about the transfer portal is players can better themselves in that way on a bigger stage. So there are a lot of people that are going to be looking at Michigan, Arizona, saying that's the de facto championship game. But I can point out a number of Final Fours where we've had a game like this, and you're not paying as much attention to the other side of the bracket, and the winner of that other game winds up winning the whole thing.
Jay, I've watched a lot of Michigan this year, and it just feels like teams hang with them for a minute, and then they go on these big spurts. And once they go on that spurt, they just blow it out. What are they doing that allows them to do that?
Well, they have another gear, and they have a number of players that have accepted roles that are better than their roles, if that makes sense. Like your role is what your team is asking you to do to win. It's not necessarily who you are. So they have a number of different leading scorers in different games, whether it's Morez Johnson Jr. or Elliot Cadeau or Namari Burnett, or there are a bunch of different players that can step forward that are all experienced, and they've played lead roles at other places they've been. They do have one drawback, or one weakness, I would say, is they lost their backup point guard, LJ Kaysen. And I say backup, he came off the bench, but he would have started for 75-80% of the teams in college basketball, maybe more. If Elliot Cadeau gets in foul trouble, twists an ankle or something, that puts him in a bad spot without LJ Kaysen in there. But they've weathered that. And look, I think you can make a case for any of these 4 teams for winning it. They're all capable of that. But I think Michigan and Arizona are the 2 best teams remaining. And then UConn, obviously they're outstanding and have that championship DNA we've been talking about. Illinois is underrated. They're the best offensive team in this tournament. And their defense has gotten better over the last month, where they're guarding legitimately, and their defense is a factor. That wasn't true earlier in the season. Their defense was their weak spot as compared to their offense. But, man, that team can really score. They've got a bunch of Eastern European players. Both Arizona and Illinois do the best job of getting international talent. And then Andrei Stojakovic, who transferred in, he was at Stanford and then at Cal. He's Peja Stojakovic's son. I thought he was their best player early in the season. Now he's coming off the bench. And in the tournament, I think he's averaging 17 a game, shooting over 60%. He's like this downhill driver that's a really good finisher. But their point guard, Keaton Wagler, I had never heard of him in high school. And that's unusual for me. But he wasn't even ranked in the top 50 or 150 in the country. And he's Tyrese Halliburton. Like, that kid he'll be a lottery pick if he decides to come out. Can't speed him up. He can shoot it, handle it. He can rebound. I think Halliburton's the comp for that kid. He's ridiculously talented.
Do you want to pivot from the Final Four to some college basketball news? We saw a massive headline last week. Will Wade is heading back to LSU. Now, you kind of spoke out about that on social media. You called it tampering and poaching, how the coaches portal is always open. We're seeing Sean Miller coaching at Texas. He was guilty of the same offense that Will Wade has. You know, we've heard a lot of public flirting from North Carolina about TJ Otzelberger or Nate Oates or some of these coaches that were still actively coaching at the time. So why is this Will Wade move receiving so much more negative rhetoric than maybe some of those other moves that we've seen in college basketball?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's probably because of the way Will handled it. He said one thing, then did another, which he's not the only coach to do that. I mean, Nick Saban did it when he went back to Alabama. We see that a lot. Like, the coaches are in a bind in that regard with their public statements. But, you know, he'd only been there for a year. But the truth is, this is business as usual for coaches. This has been going on for decades. This isn't new. What I was saying wasn't so much criticizing coaches. It was more to point out the difference in how we talk about players and how we talk about coaches. So a player that goes into the portal, we're talking about loyalty, and they don't want to go through adversity. And this is all transactional. nonsense like that. And commitment. Where's the commitment that we used to see? Players are bettering themselves in their situation just like coaches are. But the coaches are under contract. The players are not. And the coaches sign employment contracts, and it is tampering. But it's business as usual. Like the universities accept it. You take our coach, we'll go and take somebody else's, and then they'll go and take somebody else's. And it's a domino effect that affects a lot of people. And that would never happen in the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. You can't do that. There are strict rules against that. You have to go and hire somebody's coordinator, assistant coach, or something like that. But it's business as usual for coaches. And I don't think it's right. And I certainly don't think the rhetoric that's aimed at players when it's not done with coaches, like, to me, that's not only a contradiction, it's hypocrisy.
Jay, you are one of the best to do it. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate all of your insights. Thanks for the expertise. Thanks for the knowledge, my friend. Always good to catch up with you. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Follow him on social media at Jay Bilas, of course. Coming up, we'll get back to the tournament in a minute, but will Steph be returning to the NBA this season? We'll break it down for you.
Who is your first player to team fit that you absolutely love?
Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end of Oregon, to the Chiefs. And this was basically a post-combine reaction, basically Vernon Davis style numbers athletically. And so I think it was validating to see kind of him put those numbers up athletically, his speed, explosion, change of direction. He feels like a player that is not going to drop very far in this draft, especially in a draft where there aren't a ton of blue chip players.
Do you feel pressure that this is America's birthday, this is the White House, you have to represent?
Hell yeah. I do feel pressure. I feel pressure that, I got to go out there and represent for the United States, and I got to go out there and I feel like I'm going to be expected to go out there and win this fight. I'll probably be a favorite. There's pressure right there too. I put pressure on myself. I need to finish. It's been too long.
Johnson to the end zone, caught. Guess who? C.J. Jefferson.
And in talking to the coaches this week, they said that's your playmaker. That's the guy that Jerome Johnson has the most confidence in. And there you are on 4th and goal, and you throw it right at the goal line, right at the yellow line at the wall. Terrific throw. Nice catch.
Great execution there for New Mexico. They had to have a play.
The Dallas Mavericks, are they still taking Cooper Flagg, Corey?
He is legitimately, as a 6'8" wing who does everything at a high level, shows up every day, competes his ass off.
The way his handle has improved since high school to Duke to now suggests that this guy can be a MVP candidate, not just a multi-time All-Star as a role player, a high-end star role player, but a mega star.
Jason Tatum isn't just back, he's back. 32 points, 8 assists, 5 boards. Big game for him. And that brings us to a little bit of fun that we like to have on this show that we like to call Triple Threat. This is where we shoot, pass, or dribble on some big NBA takes. So shoot means we're going to take the take. We love it. It's awesome. We're having it. Pass means we want nothing to do with it. And dribble means that we're cowards and we want to wait and see. So now that we've set the line out there, shoot, pass, or dribble, we'll throw some takes out here. No Jaylen Brown. No problem. Boston absolutely annihilates. Just takes it to Charlotte. 114-99 game.
All right, easy.
Close, honestly. I know where Hornets stands on this. Is that Hornets stands? I don't know. I know that we're a Hornets show, but shoot, pass, or dribble.
We're in the Hive.
Charlotte should be praying the Hive doesn't have to take on the Celtics in round 1. Do we shoot, pass, or dribble?
Oh, shoot. 100% shoot. 1,000% shoot. But let me just say, I think I would be saying that about anyone in the East. It's not just a Charlotte thing. Like, I think that Cleveland is hoping and praying they don't have to see the Celtics. I think that the Raptors are hoping and praying they don't have to see the Celtics. The Hawks, the Sixers, name literally any team in the East. I think they should all be praying that they don't see the Celtics. But I think if we just want to focus in on the Hornets just lost to the Celtics by double digits without Jaylen Brown. So you're going to see Jaylen Brown in the first round of the postseason, or any round of the postseason for that matter. So yeah, of course, I think it's obvious. I think that's a very, very easy and maybe the easiest take I've constructed all day, that the Hornets do not want to see the Celtics in the postseason. I don't think anybody does in the East at this point.
Yeah, I don't have kids, but I have friends that have kids, and oftentimes I get invited to go support those kids in like elementary school basketball games. And if you've ever watched an elementary school basketball game, the minute the kid gets it, they immediately heave it up. That's how they shoot it. They shoot it. They shoot it every time they get the ball. That's what I'm doing with this take. I'm shooting this take so hard. And let's be very clear. This isn't about Charlotte. It has nothing to do with Charlotte. This is all about Boston. Like, at this point, there are two teams in the NBA that shouldn't be absolutely terrified of the Celtics, and that's Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Everybody else in the league should be terrified. And if we're being honest, if you inject truth serum in the veins of San Antonio and OKC, they don't want to see the Celtics either. They'd much rather see anybody not named the Celtics. The Celtics have far outperformed what we expected before they got Tatum back. Then people wanted to make it dramatic. Well, is Tatum going to be able to reassimilate? Like, they haven't played a lot of basketball. What do you know? All of a sudden, he's just getting better and better and better. This is exactly the best case scenario that the Celtics were banking on when they had the season none of us thought they could have, should have, or would have. And now all of a sudden the Celtics clearly look like they belong in that top tier. Like, we have Tom Haberstroh all the time on talking about his title tiers. To me, there's a title tier right now that is very clearly OKC, San Antonio, and Boston. I think it's fair to start putting Boston in this. So this has nothing to do with Charlotte. The rest of the East right now is all sitting there saying, my God, we're going to have to take on this team, and that's not going to look nice. All right, so how about this? Sticking with the East, all right? But a little bit of drama into the East, because the Thunder beat the Knicks yesterday. What do you know? The Knicks went on a big 7-game win streak. We're making a big deal of it, forgetting that they were beating bad teams. They lose 111-100 to the Thunder. SGA had 30, 10 in the fourth. Nice that he even played into the fourth quarter. It's rare. Brunson finishes with 32. The Knicks lose, okay? So shoot, pass, or dribble. The Knicks will have the 3 seed going into the playoffs.
Ooh, so right now the Knicks are sitting in the 3 seed, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are a game and a half back. So I'm just going to look at the remaining schedule. When Cleveland, pardon me, let me pull up the schedule. Cleveland gets the Jazz, gets Golden State, that's Steph Curry-less, the Indiana Pacers, the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Washington Wizards. When on the other hand, the Knicks get the Rockets, who are in a playoff position. They get the Celtics, who we just said are very squarely in a title tier. They get the Toronto Raptors, and then they get the final game of the season against the Charlotte Hornets, who at that point are probably going to maybe not be playing necessarily for their postseason lives, but they're going to be playing for seeding in the East. So the Knicks have a much harder schedule upcoming, where it feels like the Cavs have easy dub after easy dub after easy dub. So I'll dribble on that, just because I do think that there is a possibility where either of these two teams are sitting their superstars, which makes the outcome of these games far, less predictable. So I'll dribble on that, but I think there's definitely a possibility that the Cavs overtake the Knicks for the 3 seed.
If you were a cartoon character, you'd be Caroline the Coward, because you just dribbled on something that's really easy to pass on. I said it. I'm not even afraid. Look,
they're a game and a half back, Fitz.
Yeah, but you laid out that schedule. I don't trust the Knicks at all. And the Cavs could throw out their B team and win the rest of their games. So I don't trust the Knicks. The Cavs going to get to the 3 seed. This thing's all going to work out easy. New York goes to the 4 seed. I'm still not sure. Look, I will also say this. I don't think the Cavs or the Knicks, either one, are serious contenders in the East. I know that we want to make them serious contenders because we want this to be fun. No, the Cavs and the New York Knicks, neither of those teams are going to the NBA Finals. Market book it. I was wrong. I called the Cavs in the preseason. I was wrong. I want that take back. It's a bad take now. The Celtics are going to the NBA Finals. So I want that take back. So I will all day.
No takesies, backsies.
No, all the takesies, backsies. If the Knicks have the 3 seed, I'm passing on that. I'm passing. I'm just dishing that. I'm taking it away. All right. How about this one? Okay. So we've had you so far take the cowardly line approach of a dribble. We'll see if we can get you to shoot or pass on this one. Well, you're welcome. Last one here. Steve Kerr said the following on the still recovering, still rehabbing Steph Curry. All right. This is the quote. We're not bringing him back only for the play-in game. He needs to play some games. We need to give him a runway if this is going to work, and we're running out of games. So now, with only a few games left this season, Kerr telling us he's not just going to put Steph in for the play-in, which also is just gross that we've reached the point that the Warriors are trying to figure out what to do for the play-in. It's just, this whole thing has gone to you-know-what in a handbasket. So, shoot, pass, or dribble. Steve Kerr knows damn well Steph Curry, he's done for the year.
I'm shooting on that, and it's not just because you called me a coward, okay? I'm shooting on that for a couple of reasons. One, because that's obvious. Like, that's a smart thing to do. That is the correct approach from Steve Kerr, to not play Steph Curry unless he positively, absolutely 1,000% has to. Because what's the point? Like, what is the point of throwing Steph Curry out there in meaningless games? So the first reason why I'm shooting on that is duh. The second reason is I think that we all, in what we do, we have to learn coaches. We have to learn the language that they speak. Because even though it's English, it's not always English, right? You have to learn what a coach is saying. What are they saying versus what do they mean? Steve Kerr is not one of those coaches. He's not one of those guys. He is not somebody that will, kind of beat around the bush or try and send him a subliminal message. No, Steve Kerr has always been very honest and very forthright. So when Steve Kerr says we're not going to play him, okay, I believe him, because he was the same guy that got up on a podcast midway through the season and said, we're not contending with the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Spurs or any other team in the in the West right now. So I don't think that he was sugarcoating that. I don't think that he was saying that to motivate his team. I think he was saying that because that's how he genuinely felt. I think he's saying this because this is genuinely what he means.
I laugh because, look, I speak for a living. I say this all the time. It makes me, sometimes a pain in the butt as a friend. I'll admit that, but or in relationships, because I tell people all the time, look, I speak for a living, which means I am speaking clearly what I'm saying. It is hysterical to me that over and over and over again, Kerr has come out and given us very plain English on exactly how he feels. And we turn around and we say, well, what does he mean by that? What do you think he means? Like, there is no interpretation to so much of what we've got. We sit here and we're so used to trying to translate coaches that when we have a coach speaking with blunt honesty, we try and translate blunt honesty into something it isn't, which makes no sense to me. Over and over and over again, we've gotten the answer from Kerr as he's made it clear this team is not built to compete. Over and over and over again, Kerr has made it clear that they have no roster right now that can compete with OKC. And he has told us specifically this team cannot compete as currently constructed with Oklahoma City. He wasn't lying to anybody. He was telling us. Now he said, properly returned. Is there a deadline to come back? We're not bringing him back just for the play-in game. He needs to play some games. You know what he means? He means they're not bringing him back for the play-in game and they need to play some games. Also, on top of that, he's already told you, okay, what's the greatest scenario? The best case scenario out of this thing is that you're probably going to end up taking on an OKC team that you already told the world you are not prepared to take on should you find your way advancing, or you take on San Antonio, every bit also you're not prepared to take on. So if you're Kerr, who's already told you very, very clearly, he's told the fan base, the organization, and the press in front of a microphone that Golden State cannot compete. And now very clearly he's telling everybody we're not going to bring Kerr back unless he plays some games in the regular season before we get to the play-in. He's very clearly setting the expectation. And we're still trying to translate it. Like, the translation on this is simple. Golden State's broken. Curry's hurt. They're not going to rush him back. And they're going to go to the offseason and try and figure out how the hell to salvage something that looks like Golden State used to look like.
And I think that Steve Kerr is kind of unique in that, because there are a lot of coaches, when we hear them say something, it's okay, what does he mean by that? Let's interpret that. Let's put that into our coach translator. Oh, this is what he means. I think that Steve Kerr has the skins on the wall and has the privilege of getting to be honest. A lot of coaches don't have that privilege, but when Steve Kerr was the head of a dynasty, when Steve Kerr brought as much success to Golden State as he has, I think you've built up some equity with the front office. You've built up some equity with the fan base. But you can be brutally honest. You can afford to let everybody know, what you're thinking and exactly what the plan is. Not a lot of coaches can do that, but he feels comfortable to do that. And it's refreshing in what we do.
Steve Kerr has never been afraid to use his microphone bluntly for what he believes, whether we're talking about basketball or what he's talking about anything else. There's no translation required. He's very clear. Also, no translation ever required from the great Jeff Passan. Major League Baseball season is underway. We'll talk to one of the best in the business next about, robot umps and everything else.
What do you make of Dana's demeanor since getting into this?
I listened to all of his stuff where he used to just destroy boxing promoters, that we take no risk. And then I see him like tattoo on an island between Crawford and Canelo in a photo op where he's not doing anything. He's standing there just like one of us schmucky promoters in between two guys in like a stand-up cutout. It just feels off to me.
And the Lakers look like contenders right now. But Danny, I know you have some skepticism about this team's ability to actually get through the gauntlet that is the Western Conference. Why is that?
They'd have to beat Jokic, Wemby, and Shea in consecutive rounds, 2 of the 3 without home court advantage. I do not believe they can win 3 Western Conference playoff series. I do not believe that.
Now, they do have the ball straight up the middle. Swiggity Swooty went for the booty. That is a touchdown. What a run. I'm going to need a moment. Ball's in the air, and just like that, C.J. Wyndham with yet another big play.
That was the exact play action after the first play of that drive. They set it up perfectly.
What was your impression of him? Do you feel like you have a friendship with Giannis now?
I feel like he was just my friend. Like, I didn't even see him as just a basketball player, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I was just like that's just my guy. Cause we were just chilling. Like, he took me to his home. He took me to his first we did his first dunk in his neighborhood. So like, he was just showing me around. So and I think we still check up on each other.
Very
I just need to go to one of his games, which I promised him.
There are moments that offer a pretty good sense that something new is going to work. This feels like one for ABS. The Cincinnati crowd's reaction was thunderous, and the situation itself, twice it salvaged a bases-loaded opportunity. This system plays. That tweet from the great Jeff Passan, who joins us now. Jeff Passan, a fan of robots. That's what we've learned. Jeff, all in on robots. So I will say this. I'm a little torn. I want your insight on this because I think it's amazing, and I think it's accurate. I also think it's feeding fuel to the fire of the concept that umps suck. So where is the line between like, hey, they're getting it right, which is the most important thing, but boy, umps are really taking it on the chin right now.
Jason, I actually think this does the opposite, because part of the beauty of this ABS system is that when there are misses, it tells you the size of the miss, right? And when you see the majority of the misses are less than 1 inch, does that not suggest to you that these men and women who are back there squatting and trying to track in real time pitches that are going up to 105 miles per hour and that are going side to side up to 25 inches and that are going top to bottom 30 inches, like these unreal movements that happen on a baseball field and that pitchers can generate these days, and that umps are as close as they are, I look at it like, oh my God, these people have been doing incredible work for a long time now, and that this system's just here more than anything to catch the egregious ones. And that I understand, like when it's this close and you see it like that, the fans get very excited about that. But that to me, it's like umpires are awesome. And this is just a complimentary thing to the great job that they typically do already anyway.
I mean, it's a difference of that much, and it's also coming in at 100 miles an hour. So if anything, to your point, it is a little bit more impressive for some of the umpires. But I am a long believer that if we know an umpire or a referee's name, it's probably not a good thing. And we now know the name of umpire C.B. Buckner because he had 6 pitches overturned by ABS this past weekend, including consecutive third strikes. So big time swings in those games. The implementation of ABS, I mean, other than us publicly humiliating some of these umpires, will Major League Baseball have any other consequences for umpires that maybe have a certain number, a certain threshold of calls overturned?
Totally fair question. I think that is to be determined ultimately because we don't know at the end of the day, Caroline, how many umpires are really going to wear it on the chin with this. And we don't know what the data is going to look like. And also, by the way, the umpires have a union. So getting rid of them is a really, really difficult thing to do. I mean, if we look back at the case of Angel Hernandez was a widely loathed umpire for a long, long time. And Angel Hernandez worked for half a decade while suing his employer, Major League Baseball, for racial discrimination. And he still remained on the field because of the power of that union. So I don't foresee there being great changes in the umpiring ranks because of this. But if nothing else, it gives us more data than we had in the past. And, you know, more data is a better thing for assessing umpires and for understanding not just who's the worst, but also who's the best, and hopefully seeing them be the ones who are handed postseason assignments.
So I'm going to ask you, I know we got to get to real baseball, but I got one more question on this because I've long since said that we've accepted a batting average, for example. We accept an ERA. In football, we accept completion percentage. I hope that we reach a point where we have transparency and we accept eventually from officials a percentage of made calls. Is baseball throughout the course of the season going to give us an ABS sort of ranking on these umps or an ABS stat line on these umps? How many times it's happened? Like, is this going to become part of our lexicon over the course of this entire process where when we find out who the umps are on games, their stat sheet is essentially made public to the world?
Is Major League Baseball going to be the one who does that? I find that highly unlikely. Is there going to be some sort of entrepreneurial soul out there who, for the greater good, brings that into our lives? I most certainly hope so. And there are already groups of people who essentially are auditors for umpires. And you know what their zone looked like after the game. You know how many pitches they missed outside of the rule book zone. And I believe in CB Buckner's game, he had 88% of strike calls correct. That's not good. You know, we have seen games. We have seen actual perfect games from umpires before where they've gotten 100% of ball strike calls correct. So should there be a higher standard? Absolutely. But is Major League Baseball going to be the one upon whom we depend to distribute that out there? No, that's not going to, you know, they already have a fragile relationship with their umpires just because they do collective bargaining with them and they've gotten into the weeds with them. And I think MLB understands that if you start going after the big league umpires right now, A, you better have better replacements for them. And B, you better be ready to take on the union.
Enough robo talk. Let's talk about real human beings. Let's talk about baseball. The Dodgers are one of those teams that are still undefeated after their opening series, along with the Jays, the Brewers, the Marlins, and the Yankees. So hooray for everybody. Everyone's going 162-0. But of those 5 teams, always, yeah, that's March. Of those 5 teams, who has really piqued your interest? Understanding that it's early, but who has piqued your interest so far?
You know, Miami is interesting because you wouldn't expect them to be among those other teams, all of whom made the playoffs last season, most of whom won their divisions. The Marlins also played the Rockies. So, you know, we'll see how that goes when they start playing a real big league team. Beyond that, though, like I expected the Yankees to be good. I don't know if I anticipated that they were going to sweep like that, but I thought the Yankees were going to win the American League East this year. The Blue Jays and the Dodgers, They met in the World Series, and one of the great World Series of all times last year. So I suppose no surprise there. The Brewers, though, every year they do this. Every year you come into the season and you think to yourself, this team on paper isn't that good. And then last year they go out and win 97 games. And, years before they win National League Central titles. And Milwaukee they know how to win. Pat Murphy is a tremendous manager, and seeing Jacob Mizorowski on opening day absolutely carve the way he did, you start thinking, hey, maybe he's a guy who can take that leap this year. And even though they lose Andrew Vaughn for 4 to 6 weeks with a broken hand, they still fill in guys like Jake Bowers, who had 6 home runs in spring trainings, already had some already this year. They're just a great team. And I emphasize the team part of it because when you lose Vaughn and when you lose Jackson Churio on opening day, that you have the depth to come out and start out this way, a testament to who the Brewers really are.
All right, so let's look at the bad teams. Then I get to be Debbie Downer here, but there's a group of teams that so far stink in this season, but the one that's the most interesting to me is San Francisco because of the Tony Vitello experiment. It has not started well. How patient can they be with somebody that has no big league experience? We've talked a lot about it on this show. It was an interesting hire, and it's not starting well.
Let's put it this way, Jason. I'm going to use this as a mathematics lesson here. If you have a bad week, does that mean that you're going to have a bad year? Of course not. And I say this because there are 54 3-game series, essentially, in a Major League Baseball season. And the Giants just lost one of them, which means they have 53 times left to try and remedy that, fix that, change that. Now, if this extends into the second one, I did something in my, I'll say my heyday when I was at Yahoo Sports, a wonderful place to work and full of engaging and charming hosts. And I wrote something called The Panic Number. And I believe there was a point at which teams, when they start 1-6 or worse, like 4 of them made the playoffs over the entire history of Major League Baseball. So we haven't reached panic number quite yet, but we're on our way. And I'll say this about the Giants. Coming into this season, the expectations, I think, throughout the industry were more that the Giants were going to be like a 500 level team, as they have been on the dot the last 2 years. And maybe they have a couple guys who played better than expected, and that bumps them up to an 84 or 85 win team. And maybe they have a pitcher who has a breakout season, and that puts them up into the 87, 88 win range and into the playoff picture. But the National League is so wide open at this point. I really have a hard time counting anyone out. And no, I do not think Tony Vitello watch is on after 3 games against a really, really good baseball team in the Yankees.
There Jeff goes, being a voice of reason when we want to be here overreacting in the month of March.
Wait, no, but
Fine.
he complimented the host.
Can I just say this, guys? This is I will not make a summary declaration about a baseball team until like June. And even then, let's remember, in June last year, the New York Mets were 45-24. They had the best record in all of Major League Baseball, and they wound up not making the playoffs. So I just caution everyone, this is a long, long season. And baseball's a stupid game where weird things happen and where bad teams will sweep good teams and where good teams will then go on a run with 12 wins in a row. And so patience is the virtue that baseball fans have the toughest time learning. And I encourage and urge anyone who, after 4 days of play, is panicking, it's okay. You're going to be okay. I promise.
So let's stick on not overreacting to a win-loss record or just an early and a little bit of action that we've seen. Just in general, looking at the league as a whole, what is one team, whether it's in what they did this past offseason or what they've done with their front office, what's one team that you find fascinating this year?
I'm fascinated by the Baltimore Orioles because they go out this offseason, they sign Pete Alonso for $155 million, and they trade for Tyler O'Neill, and they get Chris Bassett, and they trade for Shane Baz, and they're overhauling this roster that, remember, like 3 years ago, out of nowhere, came up and won 100 games. 2 years ago, we're back in the playoffs, and they got bounced both times early on. But last year just collapsed to 75 and 87. They were in last place in the American League East. And you looked at that roster, and with Gunnar Henderson and Sam Basayo and Jordan Westberg and Jackson Holiday, and I could go Adley Rutschman, Dylan Beavers, Colton Hauser. Just the amount of young talent that they have there is really impressive, but they didn't have pitching. And so Trevor Rogers emerges in the second half last year, better ERA than anyone in the American League after May 24th, including Tarek Skubal. Kyle Bradish comes back from Tommy John surgery. Looks great. They just signed Baz to a 5-year, $68 million extension, and Bassett's in that rotation as well. And all of a sudden you look at this team and it's like, boy, they could contend, but for the American League East. And that's why that division is so intriguing to me. I think they are going to beat the crap out of each other this year. And the real question is going to be, outside of the division, who is going to emerge as the team that wins the most games, and thus I think finds itself with everybody else in the AL East having beaten up on each other. The Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, even to some extent the Rays. They're competitive year in, year out. Where do the Orioles fit in among that? And how, at the end of the day, close are they going to be, if not in the playoffs, to it?
Jeff, I've known you a long time, brother. I know you're never going to give me the hot take until at least the middle of summer, but, like the pretty girl at the bar, I know I'm not going to get her number. I still got to try. Come on. I had to try. We had to try, Jeff. We appreciate you, as always. You're the pretty girl at the bar. That's all I'm saying. Follow me at Jeff Passan. Follow him. I
have never been the pretty girl at the bar, by the way. I think my hair is even taller this morning just trying to compete with you, Fitz, and just trying to make an impression on you. And clearly, if you call me the pretty girl at the bar, it's working. So I'm gonna wink back at you.
Delightful.
That was creepy.
You're the pretty girl at this bar, and that's all that matters.
Oh, Jeff, man, appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight, as always. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's always a blast. So be sure to hang out with Jeff, by the way. You can catch out ESPN's Major League Baseball coverage. They're all over it. Worldwide Leaguer being the new home of MLB.TV. Appreciate you hanging out with us, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.
MLB.TV and ESPN's a great combo. Check it out. In the meantime, we had some wild action over the weekend. We'll catch you up on a bunch of it coming up next.
What are some things about the Detroit Pistons that we on the outside might not know?
The culture, when I walked into this, the culture for me was pretty impressive. The way the players kind of come to bat for each other. And, Isaiah Stewart is not a guy off the court that is like an angry human being. In that Charlotte game, it was all he was saying in the locker room was like, "I'm going to have you guys back. That's what I do." For me, it's impressive to see just how together everyone is and the culture that they've continued to build.
I have Sadiq at the top like you. That's not the surprise. Sam Roush from Stanford, who had the big combine, unlike a lot of college tight ends that are productive, he actually, in my opinion, is playing the position like a pro right now. I love how he rumbles after the catch. I like Sam Roush quite a bit, Nate, because I just love that I could put him on the line of scrimmage, and I think he's tough as hell.
If you're a team that needs a left tackle, would you be concerned that this seemingly is a right tackle draft?
Concern, no, because you got to have a plan for it. And this is where your area scouts and the forecasting of what's coming out in the draft is important, and understanding that. I want to go back to CC Mauanoa that you talked about. I think his overall stock is up for me because I'm feeling like now, if you have CC Mauanoa on your team, now he gives you the ability to put your best five on the field, whether he's your right tackle or he's your guard.
See the snap.
Jerome to throw, and that's caught. Demond Street goes up and gets it, and it'll be 1st and goal for New Mexico.
Demond Street's having a day.
first and goal. Johnson on the keeper, and he'll throw it up, and Jefferson's got it. Touchdown, New Mexico. How do you like that?
A comeback for the ages. Gary Woodland wins again on the PGA Tour less than 3 years after having brain surgery and battling PTSD. His first win in 7 years. At the Texas Children's Houston Open, 3 years removed from that brain surgery, and after vulnerably, courageously, openly talking about his battles with PTSD, Gary finds himself a winner. Caroline, this is one of those great stories in sports, especially leading up to the Masters. I have no rooting interest, but you don't have to have a rooting interest in anything or anybody to understand that Gary is the type of person you want to see win. This is just sports at its finest.
This was such a beautiful moment. And this, I think, was a perfect example sometimes of sports being the perfect microcosm just for humankind and just for beautiful stories of human resilience, of fight, of loving something and doing everything within your power to get back to doing that thing whenever your life knocks you down. So this was just such a lovely story just to watch him out there with a club in his hands, out there on the golf course, and then to see him actually win it and to be able to hoist a trophy, and knowing that that moment meant so much more to him than just winning a competition. But it was probably the perfect example of, I did it. I was probably in a time in my life not very long ago when I didn't even know if I'd be able to walk again. Now I'm winning athletic championships and I'm winning athletic tournaments. It's just such a beautiful story, and I think a perfect example of why I love sports so much is because it's just human emotion in its purest form. It was absolutely beautiful.
Championships through challenge resonate, and that's why when we watch movies or documentaries, we always want to see the rise that you have to go through. I don't know that you can have more challenge than Gary has had to face, and to see just the joy on his face, even in that picture, it gives you goosebumps because you understand the appreciation he has for every single moment that he's getting right now to walk on a golf course. Certainly with the Masters around the corner, we will continue to talk about Gary because it's one of the great stories, not just in golf, but in all of sports. Let's keep getting everybody caught up on some of the other stories coming through as we scroll through some other things that caught our eye. I don't know if you saw this, but as a person that has an entire basement full of Vegas Golden Knights championship stuff, the Vegas Golden Knights have relieved Bruce Cassidy of his duties as head coach. John Tortorella, a known coach around the NHL, has been named head coach at least for now. And Caroline, I'll tell you, I was shocked when I saw this coming. My first reaction was, did somebody get hacked? Is this the actual account? What do we have here? But I will remind everybody that there is one standard and one expectation in Vegas, and that is championships. The last time they qualified for the playoffs, everybody got fired, and fans looked around and said, it's one time. Hockey guys all over the world looked around and said, it's one time. How can you fire everybody? That's what they did. I remember, I'm old enough to remember in this short history of the Golden Knights when Cassidy was curious as a coach for everybody, and now all of a sudden he steps right in having won that Stanley Cup. This feels strange. I'll admit, I don't know the timing of it. I'll admit. But also, the Vegas Golden Knights have proven one thing continuously as a franchise. If they do not believe that they are on the doorstep to a championship, they will make whatever change they feel like they have to make to continue to push forward.
This was a jaw-dropping move for me. Maybe people locally in Vegas or people who follow the team on a day-to-day basis weren't so blown away by it. But look, Bruce Cassidy won a Stanley Cup 3 years ago. John Tortorella won his last cup 22 years ago. There's a reason why John Tortorella is not coaching in the NHL right now. There's a reason why he's been watching hockey from his couch for the last year. Although John Tortorella is one of the most well-respected coaches in the NHL right now, it's just shocking to me. Look, I do understand what the standard is in Vegas. They've lost 6 of their last 7. The trajectory going into the postseason probably wasn't great. So I will acknowledge and tip my cap to the Vegas front office that if you know that a guy is not the guy, you make your mind and you make your decision right then. Like if your mind is made up, you do something about it. It's that level of action that I think a lot of teams in the NHL and maybe a lot of teams in sports could maybe take a page out of that playbook and just make a move. But if you're sure that Bruce Cassidy is not the guy to get you back to the promised land, what makes you think John Tortorella is?
Yeah, and that's why I have to wonder if Tortorella is simply a stopgap while they figure it out. And what they looked at is say, we don't want to go in. We don't want to just surrender the cup. Like, let's at least see if we can get a spark plug going into the Stanley Cup, and then we'll figure out what everything looks like for the future. Vegas, this is always, you know me, I'm risk averse when it comes to making massive change. Vegas has rolled the dice before.
Yeah.
It's worked. We'll see if they can continue, no pun intended, to roll the dice now and have it work. Also, around the news and notes of the weekend, you may have missed this, but the WNBA is getting a Houston franchise again, and it comes with a little bit of heartbreak for me personally, but the WNBA returning, the Fertitta family agreeing to purchase the Connecticut Sun for a record-breaking $300 million. Now, Connecticut will relocate. They'll play this 2026 season at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, where they played, and then they will relocate to Houston. Not without some controversy on this, as there was a higher bid available to move the team to Boston. There was a higher bid available to keep the team in Connecticut, but the WNBA chose instead to award this to Houston and will relocate the franchise, meaning there's no longer a WNBA team at all in New England. I'm frankly, to be very blunt, Caroline, I think that is a mistake. I think they are taking, whether or not they were going to add a team for Houston, whether or not the Connecticut Sun were working, those are separate. Not having a sports franchise for your league in New England seems like an absolute miss for the WNBA, and I have to wonder how quickly they'll figure that out in expansion.
I'm with you. It does feel like a massive miss. But right now, the WNBA is in the business of making money. Houston's a bigger market than Connecticut is. The Fertitta family, I've been to a Tillman Fertitta party. My goodness, was it swanky? So I know the man's got money. He's going to invest a ton of money into this WNBA franchise. So larger market, an owner who is willing to spend and wants to be successful, I think is a positive thing for this franchise, and something that maybe the Connecticut Sun has been lacking in recent years, and a big reason why the Connecticut Sun will no longer be the Connecticut Sun. But my heart does hurt for an area that is so rich in history and tradition in women's basketball. My heart hurts for all of the Connecticut Sun fans out there that have been so loyal and supportive of this team and this franchise. My question is, look, we've had women's basketball in Houston before. We've had a WNBA franchise in Houston before. They lost it for a reason. Does the WNBA feel like there is a big enough need and want and desire and fan base in Houston to support this team? And look, you've got the Texas Longhorns. They are, probably heading to the Final Four, one of the best teams in the country. You've got TCU that's going to be playing tonight for an opportunity to get to the Final Four. You've got LSU that's 4 hours down the road that's been a consistent contender year over year. Like, you've got a big fan base and some successful college basketball teams right in the Houston area. We've seen a huge trickle up effect from college fan bases to the WNBA. We've seen that with Caitlin Clark, obviously. We've seen that with Angel Reese. We're seeing that with Paige Beckers and so many other UConn faithful. That the college to WNBA pipeline has been so strong. I do think that Houston is in the right geographical location to kind of build upon that. But I do wonder, is a WNBA team in Houston really feeling a need as much as it was in Connecticut? But after all, more than anything, Fitzy, money will win.
And you make a strong point, by the way, that, at the end of the day, I'm not sure that the Mohegan tribe that owns the Connecticut Sun currently is financially equipped to compete with where the NBA is taking the WNBA, right? Like, two things can be true here. And I think, frankly, it was always going to be difficult to grow the way they wanted to grow at Mohegan. They were going to have to move to downtown Hartford or move to Boston, which made a lot of sense for a Boston area that is absolutely clamoring for WNBA opportunity. This is a 100%. Big moment for Houston, and it's a loss for the Sun. I still go back to just leaving out an entire region is, I think, the biggest heartbreak I have here. The Sun, it's going to be a bummer for so many fans, and relocation always hurts at a different level for fans that lose franchises. You know that as somebody, that grew up in St. Louis. I know that as a Raiders fan. I've seen this multiple times in my life. Relocation is something that's just part of sports. But the WNBA, I don't think, is done long-term expanding, so hopefully the New England plan gets announced at some point. What I know is that we will be back right here tomorrow at 9 a.m. The chaos never stops, and we're here to break every single ounce of it down. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We appreciate you trusting us to give you all the breakdowns from the weekend. Come back, hang out with us again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, for more Yahoo Sports Daily.